Hello good people, Ibra here with Hardware Canucks. This is the Samsung Galaxy S9. So this is the BlackBerry Key 2.
Alright good people, so it is time for the OnePlus 6.
This is 90 days with the Galaxy Note 9, the Google Pixel 3.
So in this video I want to share all my ups and downs with the most expensive smartphone I have ever bought.
But, what would be the perfect Android smartphone for 2019? Let's talk about that right after this. The new Master Liquid ML AIO liquid coolers from Cooler Master come in both 120 and 240mm variants, now with addressable RGB LEDs, both for the fans and the pump that can be controlled via this hub with options to adjust the lighting effects and speed, along with the ability to control them through the respective motherboard software. Check out the ML120 and ML240R AIOs down below. Alright, so the first thing that needs to be addressed is the design and handling, because throughout 2018, pretty much every smartphone that have come out almost looks similar to one another. I mean, nothing really stood out to me the most, except for a few exceptions, because, you know, if you look at smartphones or the smartphone market in general, every smartphone came with some sort of a glass back, which obviously is prone to cracks, and it also scratches easily. It's also slippery, so it has its all drawbacks. But I really liked what Google did with their Pixel 3 device that came with a frosted matte texture at the back that gave it a little bit of a grip, but also it looked really nice in person. So I'd love to see companies sort of take a different approach when it comes to the material finish on the back, so that it not only gives you a better grip, but you can also, look at it and admire it in person when you're, just handling the device in general. Now, an honorable mention has to go to the BlackBerry Key 2, and I get it, no one really buys BlackBerry these days, but I mean, the textured finish of the back really gives you a sense of confidence when you're using the device, and honestly, I really enjoyed my time just handling that unit in the first place. Moving on to quality components, and this might be a weird one, but hear me out for a second. You see, we've been seeing all these Android smartphones that have come out in the market that come with the wow factor that just automatically makes you want to hold it and feel it in your hand so that you cannot worry about the rest. Well, the thing is, some brands tend to cheap out on a few of their components on the inside that just takes away from the whole experience. I'm going to kick things off with microphones, because it is an essential increment, or I guess an important element of a smartphone, because you are making phone calls, you're recording video here and there, so you want to make sure that you have a really good microphone to actually pick up good audio. And the bust of the year has to go to the Pixel 3, because this, in my opinion, has the worst microphone ever. I mean, you really can't take proper video with it. Sometimes you really can't make proper phone calls. So, I'd love to see brands implement better microphones and just little things that can help elevate that experience and just complete the device in the first place. Now, I'm not sure if this is just me, but I would love to see Android phones come out with an alert slider on the side so that you can quickly toggle between your ring, your vibrate, or your silent mode, so that you can easily, switch between those different modes rather than having to, fiddle around with software or the operating system. So that would be an excellent addition, because the 6D has it, and I honestly can't go back to a device that does not have it, because it's an awesome feature. Next up is the display, and having looked back at phones that have been launched in 2018, it's unfortunately very difficult to distinguish one from the other because of the notch implemented at the top. It's sad, I mean, I get it, everyone's trying to follow Apple's footsteps, but it would have been really nice to see brands sort of take that notch implementation a step further by making it a little bit more minimal. I love what OnePlus did with the 6D with the teardrop notch approach. I mean, it looks absolutely gorgeous and minimalistic. It doesn't take away from the whole content consuming experience, and I absolutely love it. But when you look at things like the ones found in the Google Pixel 3 XL, it just doesn't make any sense. Now, word on the street is that next year's flagships might feature punch hole displays, and honestly, I don't know what to say, because it's a hole on the screen, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a distracting element, but I'm going to let you guys chime in on that in the comments down below. Now, we obviously have to talk about the display technology, whether that be IPS or AMOLED. I mean, everyone has their own preference. Some people love the dark contrast, super saturated images, to whom AMOLED might be the way to go, whereas other people might prefer the more natural look that you want to be able to see, which is where IPS comes into play. But I'd love to see brands improve and tune the brightness on displays for next year's phones, so that people can actually view content a little bit more comfortably outdoors. I love what LG did with the G7 ThinQ. It's a different color matrix within the display. In this case, it's RGBW instead of the standard RGB. So that means there is a separate white channel for the backlit to pass through, resulting in consistent color uniformity as well as increased brightness. I mean, we're talking 1,000 nits, which is pretty awesome. Now, another thing that I would love to see brands implement on their displays for next year would be to implement high refresh rates. We've been seeing this with gaming phones lately. I mean, the Razer Phone 2 with its 120Hz screen is just absolutely phenomenal. Once you go 120Hz, it's really hard to go back. I mean, the experience is just so fluid, and just navigating through the UI, it just makes the phone feel faster, and it's really hard to go back to a device featuring just a standard 60Hz screen. So we've seen this with the ROG phone with an AMOLED display going all the way up to 90Hz. So it's definitely possible, but I'd love to see it on phones, or at least majority of the phones, flagship devices for next year. Also, front-facing speakers, please, because I get the whole point of brands trying to make their phones look more futuristic by going the whole bezel-less approach, but in my opinion, the Pixel 3 strikes the right balance between screen-to-body ratio, because it not only gives you a bigger display in a compact form factor, but it also gives you 2 speakers at the front, so content consuming experience is just so much better, and listening to music, of course, is awesome. So I would love to see more phones for next year come out with front-facing speakers. Okay, so this next factor is an important one, and that is the software experience, because as much as awesome as your hardware might be, if the software experience isn't as good enough, then the whole experience just doesn't add up. It doesn't complete the whole equation. So I'd love to see brands keep it as simple as they can, simple and clean. Don't give us a lot of bloatware and duplicate apps. Just keep it simple and give us a few customization options within the UI and a few other general items. Personally speaking, Oxygen OS on the OnePlus 6T and other OnePlus devices has surprised me by a big margin. I mean, the amount of customization you get with this particular OS is just insane. For instance, there is a dedicated dark mode built in, which translates really well into other apps like Messages, Phone, etc. You can also change the accent color, switch between different navigation buttons, heck, even customize the call vibration pattern, which is just insane. And there are a whole lot of other gesture controls baked into the OnePlus 6T, and I absolutely love using this device over the Google Pixel 3, which is just insane. And of course, I'd love to see brands guarantee software updates for at least the next 3 years, so that if the next version of Android comes out, you're not left out of the equation, especially after spending at least $1,000+ on a device that just can't give you guaranteed software updates. It just doesn't make any sense. LG and Samsung, I'm looking at you guys, because when you look at OnePlus as a brand, you know, the 6T is continually receiving software updates, but heck, even the 3T has been receiving software updates since day one, which is pretty awesome. Next up is battery life, and unfortunately, there hasn't been a significant improvement in that department for the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, an average Android smartphone in 2018 would still last you for about a day or so, but I'd love to see brands experiment on that tech for next year, so perhaps we'll see something that's revolutionizing, so it changes the way how we use our devices. I'm also really thankful for, you know, technologies like Warp Charge and Dash Charge from OnePlus, or even Huawei Supercharge, that just gets you up and running in no time, so you don't have to worry about, you know, running out of battery very soon, because fast charging is certainly a thing now. But also, I'd love to see wireless charging becoming a standard on most devices. I think it's almost getting to be a standard right now in 2018, but when I look at a phone like OnePlus and their 6T, you know, this phone doesn't have wireless charging, and I really wish it did, but it doesn't. So I'd love that to be a standard for next year. Moving on to camera performance, and I would love to see Android smartphones in 2019 come with a wide-angle lens, so you can play around with a different perspective when you're shooting outdoors or just playing around with mobile photography. That's one of the features that I really loved with LG's flagship devices, so I'd love to see that being a feature in 2019. But you know, if you give us a wide angle, a standard lens, and a telephoto lens, that would be highly appreciated. I know Huawei does that with their Mate 20 Pro, but I'd love to see that being a standard in flagship smartphones for 2019. The next thing that I want to talk about is software processing, because LG, Samsung, Huawei, and even OnePlus tends to, you know, overprocess the image, and it just takes away from the full potential of the sensor. So I'd love to see brands minimize on that department. I mean, a good example would be a recent video that I did with the OnePlus 6T. I installed the Google camera port on this device, and it just totally changed the way and how I took pictures with this phone. The difference is just day and night compared to the stock camera app. You get more detail, you know, the shadows are awesome. There's just better dynamic range with this particular device, and it's more contrasty, and I just love the way how it looks with the Google camera port compared to the stock app. So certainly minimize on the software processing department for next year. Lastly, this might be too much to ask, but manual focusing for video mode, I mean, it's a lot to ask, I get it, but it would be nice to see that on a phone in 2019. All right, so I'm gonna wrap things up with a few extras. Particularly, I just want to talk about in-display fingerprint readers, because we initially saw that with the OnePlus 6T and a few of their phones, primarily the 6T because it's now available in the States, but it's still first-gen tech and it still has a long way to go. It's not as fast as a physical reader at the back, but With the recent Qualcomm Summit, we saw that the new 855 processor has support for a 3D sonic sensor. So it actually, it's the accuracy when it comes to reading your fingerprint is just a lot more better compared to the first gen tech that we're seeing with OnePlus and a few other devices. So I'm sure the brands will tend to implement in-display fingerprint readers on their devices for next year. It's definitely cool tech, but my only concern is replaceability, because if something goes wrong, if your screen cracks, I mean, what's the process of replacing that, right? Because the sensor's underneath the glass, and is it gonna cost you an arm and a leg? That's my question. And finally, I just want to comment on pricing for devices, because unfortunately, phones are getting expensive year by year. $1,000 is sort of the standard now when it comes to the flagship premium smartphone. But when you look at a device like the OnePlus 6T that costs less than $600, it offers all the basic features that you have, but it also offers the greatest software experience that you possibly could want on a device of this type. So I'd love to see more brands follow the footsteps of OnePlus by offering devices within this price range, by taking away some of the flagship features, but also give us the bare essentials that we need on a device. So I think $650 is a cool sweet spot for a phone for next year, but I don't even know if that's going to happen. So what I'm looking for an Android flagship smartphone in 2019 is basically a device that's simple in terms of design, that comes with a different texture at the back so that it's easier to hold in the hand. Also, I'd love to see brands implement quality components like a good microphone, good speakers, and display-wise, I'd love to see brands to minimize on the notch, just so we're not getting something that looks like a punch hole display, which I really hope doesn't happen. And in terms of the operating system, just give us a clean UI without any bloatware. And of course, I would appreciate guaranteed software updates for at least 3 years. And finally, in terms of camera performance, I'd love to see brands sort of take a step back from post-processing and give us the true natural potential of what the sensor can capture.
Have you ever wondered how to build a system you can't hear? It starts with a case, my friend. The Silent Bass 601 and 801 by Be Quiet are the tools for the job, with all the expected airflow options, innovative interiors, an awesome toolless panel design, and noise-absorbing foam in all the right places. Check out the cases you cannot hear in the description below.
I want to hear your thoughts on the perfect Android smartphone for 2019. What are your expectations for that? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm Ivo with Hardware Canucks. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check out some relevant content over here, subscribe to our new Boot Sequence channel, and we'll see you in the next one.